Hey guys, this will be video one for a new series I'm going to do called Building a Custom 58 Explorer Replica. And this is going to be an incredibly cool project because it's going to be a sapphire blue body and a sapphire blue neck with a maple fretboard with shark fin inlays. And speaking of that, I did get the mother of pearl inlay ordered, purchased and ordered, and it's going to take about 2 weeks for it to get in. And this video series is primarily going to be for the client, for the client to check in from time to time and see the progress of the build, as well as I might need some information as to the direction that he wants me to take with a certain thing. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to just present it in video form, and then he can send me a text or an email later on and go, yeah, I like option A, option B, or C, or something like that. Keeping myself on point, I'm going to try to keep this video under about 30 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and cover on the front end exactly what it is that I need right now. I'm going to need to get a general idea of of your playing style art, as well as what it is that you want. Since I don't know you, we haven't hung out together. I haven't heard you talk about your favorite neck, your favorite guitar, your favorite this, your favorite that. Maybe you're fat jazz player, I mean, like the fat style, like a fat profile neck. Or maybe you're into shredding and you need a super thin neck. Or maybe you're a big guy with really big hands, but they're real muscular, and or you're short and stocky and you got real, stocky fingers, and you need a thin neck. So I kind of need to know what it is that you need, so that I don't make too many assumptions. And I'm going to cover this. I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking about this stuff in a little while, but I just want you to be thinking about what it is that you have played and that you like, and that'll help me start to process, because I'm going to be coming out of the gate. And if you were to ask my opinion, I'm going to say, hey, let's stick to a certain traditional profile that's kind of universal. It's not too thin, it's not too thick, it's kind of moderate Gibson specs. And there's a neck profile they're building now called the Carmelita. And it's kind of funny because that's the profile that I've always been building, especially just a modern jazz neck profile. And a lot of people are parading them for saying, "Oh yeah, they finally got it right with the Carmelita design. It's a phenomenal neck, et cetera, et cetera." But regardless, neither here nor there. I just want to make certain that I'm on the same page with you as to what it is you need. But if you don't know, then I'll help you get there. And the things I'm going to cover in this video are going to be the parts that have been ordered very quickly. And then I'm going to talk about the body and neck construction up to this point, as well as I just mentioned, I'm going to go into pretty extensive detail about the neck profiles and options and how I achieve that end result. And then we're going to talk about my version of Sapphire Blue versus your version of Sapphire Blue, so that we're on the same page again. And even if, in case I forget, probably one of the most important things, since I don't know you, if you're if you're wanting a guitar that you're wanting to perform with, and you're going to be performing in the sunlight, like the California sunlight, we're going to want to go with a fairly dark shade of sapphire blue. But just understand that uh, would end up looking almost black if you were in a bar or a basement with the lights turned down really low. So just let me know things like that your playing style has, I mean, your playing location, as well as what it is you're trying to achieve there. So speaking of that, let me check the time and see where we are. 4 minutes. Yeah, that's not too bad of an intro. So basically, I'm just trying to get on page with the client and find out what it is they really want to end up with, because it is a bit of a spooky thing when you're building a custom guitar for someone that you've never met, or you've never heard play, or you've never heard them, talk about their favorite, you know, supermodel guitar. So, what has been done so far? I've ordered a custom a fretboard. Okay, let me just read off this list. I've got the shark fin mother of pearl ordered. It's going to take about 2 weeks to get that. It's per the listing that you saw, and it is Australian white, mother of pearl, and it's not just mother of pearl out of the box. It is the select mother of pearl, so it should have some really beautiful figure to it, and it is pretty much spot on per Jackson specs. And as you've seen in the pictures, it should be really stunning. And this is the only company I get my pearl from. If I'm having pre machined pearl, this is the only company I trust because everything they've sent me so far has been really beautiful. I did order a quarter sawn rock maple fretboard. It's not finished. It's just a blank of wood that's basically about this size right here, but it's just perfectly rectangular. It is quarter sawn and it's very clear, and it's if anything, it shouldn't have any figure much at all, but it may have a little bit of radiance when you turn it, because once you cut maple on the quarter, it can't help but show either a little bit of a bear claw or maybe a little bit of a curly to it or something like that. But for the most part, it's going to look a lot like the pictures that you've been sending. And then even tomorrow, I'm going to be going to Woodcraft over in Birmingham, Alabama, and buying some other maple for future projects. And I most likely will be buying some bird's eye maple. I might buy some curly, but I like the bird's eye because it's also a hard maple. You can't use a soft maple on a fretboard. Uh, Especially on the neck, you wouldn't want to do a soft maple, which that's really dangerous. But where I'm going with this, you might say, hey, I want a figured maple neck, or I want a figured maple fretboard. Well, that could mean five or six different things. It could either be a quilted maple, it could be a curly maple, it could be a quarter sawn maple, it could be crystal clear where it's almost white. So anyway, those are some things to consider. But all of the pictures that you've sent me so far, it's very much so a northeastern um, rock maple or hard maple, and it is quarter sawn, as you even clarified in your initial request. So that's what I've ordered so far. But I'm going to get some more maple tomorrow, and then we'll select which one you want to go with. And then the Jescar frets, I'm not going to spend any time talking about this at all in the video because I've spent enough time talking about it in text form with you. But I really love the Jescar fret. These are actually gold, which I don't know. I don't think I'd recommend using the gold again. I did it on a Flying V, and it was really beautiful. It was on a rosewood, but that's what the gold looks like after about 3 to 6 months. It loses its mirror. I'm sorry, I think I just got a phone call. But it loses its mirror shine after a while, and it's still okay, but it's a little bit bland. Whereas the nickel silver has a tendency to stay more neutral, so I suggest we go with the nickel. And I've already ordered the Jescar. Can't ever remember the number. I think it's called a 41704, 41074. I thought I wrote it down. Never mind. I'm gonna stop talking about it because I'm getting too long-winded. But anyway, so the Jescar frets material. Oh yeah, there it is. 47104 wide medium, and I've already sent you the specs on that. That's been ordered. And I just mentioned that I plan to buy a stock of the bird's eye maple from Woodcraft. Oh, I'm glad I'm just looking at my list. This is really going to help me stay on point. The reason I highly recommend anyone out there building a guitar, if you're building a guitar, that means you're excited, you're anxious, and you're really ready to pull the trigger on the project. If you go to Woodcraft or a Woodcraft equivalent, their wood is obviously going to be kiln dried, And not only is it kiln dried, KILN, it's been sitting in their shop, uh, which is air conditioned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that is the whole idea about working with something like building a musical instrument. It's probably one of the pinnacle builds as far as making certain that your wood is extremely well seasoned and extremely well acclimated to your shop. And it's the middle of summer, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt because I keep my shop ice cold. I keep my house, air conditioned 24/7, so that if I've got wood over in the corner that's been sitting here for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10 years, 5 years, I know that I can pick it up. I don't even have to check the moisture on it. It's probably a moisture content of 6%, and it's incredibly stable. So I'm talking about stability, because if I build a guitar here in my shop and I ship it to either an extremely dry climate like Arizona, I don't have any worry about that wood possibly shrinking. Or I could ship that guitar to Japan or to Costa Rica, which I shipped an Explorer replica to Costa Rica a few months ago, and no complaints, because I know that the moisture content in the wood is healthy and it can go to any climate in the world. And speaking of that, I have shipped guitars all over the world since early 2000s, like 2002, 2003 is when I started shipping them to Japan, all over the UK, Australia. Shipped a guitar to Russia once. That was incredibly cool. And shipped them all over the US as well. So, anyway, it's very important that once you start gluing one board to another board and to that board to that body, that everything's acclimated, and it will be just that. So I spent a little bit too much time talking about that, but it's very important that I mention the kiln dried, stored 24/7 in an air conditioned climate, because the wood that I get from Woodcraft will be pretty much ready to pull the trigger and start roughing out. And I'll still let it acclimate for about a week if we go with that wood. Let me check the time again. All right, 12 minutes and 31 seconds of a whole bunch of incredibly important information. So we're going to talk about body. The body and the neck are 95% fit right now, and I'll show that in a little while. But I've still got some rounding over to do, like on this tenon right here. You can see how this tenon is pretty much really close, but I've still got some shaping right there. But it's fitting just master level. It's really incredible. It's fitting really well. And then the, what is that, 17 to 18? I don't know what I meant by that. Okay. Oh, the primary objective of doing the pre-fitment on the neck, and I'll talk, if I don't talk about it later, I'll go ahead and cover it briefly. See, this is cut on a bit of an angle. When you come up this line right here, if this were straight, well, then that would go into the body straight. But it's cut right here on this heel at an average of about 2 degrees, 2.25 degrees pitched that way. Okay, that should make perfect sense. And what that pitched that way, I'm exaggerating. And what that allows that to do, that allows that neck to start pitching down a little bit. Therefore, as the strings come up onto the body, our target is the bridge and the string height at the bridge. This is bar none the most important part about the whole build. Getting that neck pitch, that neck angle correct, assures you that when you pick that guitar up, it feels like a $10,000 Gibson Explorer, or it feels like a multi-$1,000 Strat. If you went in straight, then it would feel more like a Strat. But since we're building an Explorer replica, then we've got to replicate everything, even the critical engineered dimensions. And I'm going to stop because I'm getting too technical without demonstrating it. But it boils down to, it just boils down to if you get this pitch for a Les Paul replica, obviously this pitch is about mine are under 4 degrees, but typically they go about 4 degrees. And what we're shooting for here is the ability to maintain a string height from right here to the top of that body on a small body electric guitar. We want this dimension right here to be about right at 17 millimeter, or a little bit over 5/8 of an inch height. If you get much higher, it'll start feeling real weird. Excuse me, unless you're planning on doing a real high pick guard. I don't like pick guards, so I'm not going to start talking about Les Pauls, but this is set a little bit higher just because it is an arch top. But when we get to your guitar uh, or any flat top guitar, I want to be able to slide a bamboo skewer under the top of the body and the bottom of the thumb wheel. This one's about a bamboo skewer and a half, and that's exactly where I want it because of the way I have this guitar set up. But we'll be targeting about 5/8 of an inch minimum, or 11/16 max. Okay, and what that's based on, if you're doing a paint grade body without a pick guard, then you're going to want to pitch that down. This is pretty important. If you're doing a body without a pick guard, be careful about getting this pitch too high, because you'll feel the thickness of that pick guard missing. The Explorer, or either like a Strat type guitar, they do have the pick guard, so you've got to allow for the thickness of that pick guard in the feel, the playing feel, because even though the top of the guitar might be 11/16, back here at the playing surface, it feels like it's 5/8 of an inch. Okay, and I better stop because I'm not too technical. And that's not what this video was meant to be. But I just want to let you know that I know what I'm doing, and it's very important. I spend a lot of time making certain that I get these engineered properly, so that once that bridge goes in place, it's sweet and low, and the action feels really good. Okay. And then we'll be talking about neck profiles. This is really, really critical. I probably spent too much time talking about the neck profiles on the front end, but I'm about to start giving you some dimensions about nut widths, taper, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And then I say neck profiles per the client specs, meaning since I don't know the client, I really need him to, or if it's a he or she that I'm building the guitar for, this guitar is for a guy, but I'll always reference him or he. If I knew him, then I would know those things, but I don't. And when you're pulling the trigger on these power tools, the decisions you make or the router bits that you use are completely determinant upon information that the player gave you. Okay. So I spent a little bit of time talking about that stuff, and later on, and then we'll talk about Sapphire Blue. And I may have already mentioned it, but the sunlight versus playing indoors. And if I'm redundant, I'm just redundant because I'm not going to stop this video and try to restart it, because I'll end up forgetting what I covered or did not cover. But we're going to talk a little bit about trans tint, which is probably the most incredible tints ever used in any custom guitar that you typically see that has a color shade to it. Probably 9 times out of 10, the luthier used a trans tint in order to change those colors. This ends up being about $30 to $35 for, I think this is 2 ounces, but it lasts forever. So, and then when you're working with solid colors, then you're getting into the world. I'm gonna go ahead and knock this out so I don't have to talk about it later on. But then you're getting into the world. This is white on the left and black on the right. This is from Germany, and it's called Mixol, Mixol, and it pretty much, that's a Schwartz black, and that's just a white. And like if you were doing a vintage like a white color, you would take the white and go with the maybe like 1 or 2 drops of the white, and then 1 drop of the honey amber, and you'll end up with a real beautiful old like a blonde Les Paul, a blonde Strat or something like that. But I'll be using trans tint to achieve the sapphire blue, and it should be incredible. And one thing I need to, and let me just stop. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think I did clarify. I got to make certain that we're on the same page as to what your idea of sapphire blue is, because what I'm thinking when I think of sapphire blue, I did a Google search for just like sapphire blue, and the first thing that popped up was this wedding ring. It was an actual sapphire stone, and that's probably the most beautiful shade of blue I've ever seen in my entire life. And I don't have that color, but it was kind of more along the darkness of what's going on in this pencil. Whereas if you were in real dark light, then that's going to almost look black. But then once it goes under the spotlight, then you'll see that, oh wow, it's definitely sapphire blue. But that's about as light as I would want the guitar to go. If we're talking sapphire blue, this is way too light right here. Okay, so we got some ground to cover there, and I'll do some samples of that. But it would make it so much easier if you, the client, just took a screenshot of something that you like and just send that to me, and then say, hey, this is my favorite coffee cup, and man, I got to tell you, that's my idea of sapphire blue. Then that's cool. If you want to send me that coffee cup or break the stem off and send, that's fine, because I've painted enough that I can match those colors based on what you tell me. Uh, but again, it'll change if it's in the California sunlight or the Florida sunlight, or if you're on tour in Europe, in the European sunlight. It's probably the same sun over there as we've got over here. Just, not being funny, but just let me know what your idea of sapphire blue is, Art, and I appreciate it. And in this video, I will be referring to the guy as Art. That's very close to his name, and he is in California, so I'll be probably talking about art in California, stuff like that. And speaking of that, I may have already mentioned it, but I shipped one Explorer replica to Santa Cruz, and so you guys may see that guitar gigged out there, because that guy is actually a gigging guitar player, and I need to get in touch with him as well. So let's get back on point, and let's start repeating a lot of what I just. Let me check the time. Yeah, 22 minutes. So let me know about your profile, Art, because the cool thing, we got plenty of time, but before I build this fretboard, I'll be able to change this if I need to. I won't need to be doing any major route work, because I just won't, but I'll be able to pre-shape it before I actually build the maple fretboard and then glue that on. Because to give you an idea, most guys probably don't know this, but when you're building a fretboard, you're building it on a jig, and you start out with a square block of wood. Sometimes you're starting out with a blank of wood that large, and you've got to cut it down. You got to cut nearly 40% of it away, and then taper it, do all this cut. So you're doing this enormous amount of cut work to get it to that point. And then at that point, then you're laying out the scale, you're adjusting the taper, et cetera, and then before you're going ahead and cutting the fret slots, and then after you cut the fret slots, then you're machining for all of the mother of pearl, and then after the mother of pearl is in, keep in mind it's all flat. Then after the mother of pearl is in, then I'm putting it on my router station, and I actually have a routing bit that cuts this radius profile a little bit at a time, and I'm easing up into this, cutting this profile, and then you flip it over and you run it on this side, and you start raising the bit as you're cutting this profile. And I'm cutting a 12-inch profile, because a 12-inch radius, because that's per historical Gibson specs, it's per the bridge, it's per all that jazz. and it's even per the frets or pre-radius that go in. So there's an enormous amount of work to building a fretboard. It's very time consuming, and it's also probably one of the most stressful jobs you'll do in the whole build because you can't f up. You screw something up, you better be really good at making repairs or making changes. You can make corrections and changes, but if you do have to do that, make sure you communicate with your client so that they're a part of that change. Um, Not jinxing myself because I'm pretty darn good at doing fret work. I've done a lot of inlay. I've never done decorative inlay. I hate that type of stuff. But anyway, it'll be really time consuming as it'll take 2 weeks to get the mother of pearl in, and then it'll probably take a whole week just to build the fretboard. So we're looking at a minimum of 3 weeks from now before I'm actually gluing the fret finished kind of the fret. Well, it won't have the frets in it, but I'll be gluing the fretboard down atop the neck, which is already glued in the body at that point and painted. So I've got plenty of work to do between now and when the mother of pearl comes in. But there'll be a lot of work that'll be taking place in about 3 weeks from now. Okay, when all of that's going together. So, and I'm pretty sure the client is aware that yeah, this wasn't something that we're going to be able to finish in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks or something like that. I think looking at the big picture, it shouldn't take more than about 4 weeks to do the whole job. Why? Because most of the job, well, this is already finished. Okay. So, anyway, what's next? Uh, Talked about the 5/8 inch pitch, and these are things that the client doesn't need to let me know. Oh, do you want? Yeah, I want it to be 5/8 or 11/16. I already know those things, but I'm just letting you know that setting that pitch is very important. So, and this is going to sound like a bit of a digression or a repeat, but let's actually start talking about neck profiles and what I typically build versus what the client might want. So when I think about this guitar, this is an Explorer replica body with an Explorer replica headstock, um, but it's got a unique fretboard out of maple and then a very unique inlay, fret marker inlays that are a strong deviation from any 58 Explorer we've ever seen, okay, or any Gibson product or any Gretsch product or blah blah blah, whatever it is you're replicating. Uh, so when I see a shark fin inlay on a guitar with a wild ass body like the Explorer, I'm thinking this guy's probably into rock and roll. He's probably into prog. He's probably into modern stuff. He might be a jazz cat. I don't know, but I don't see a fat, clunky rhythm guitar here. I see a guitar that's probably meant, and I'm making assumptions here. I'm probably seeing a guitar that's meant to feel like you could do some real fast fret work with it, but that's not my call because I'm not a real fast player. I just never could cross that threshold. I'm a really good rhythm guitar player and chordal player, and I want to do the occasional, snappy runs, but I just need to know what it is that you want, Art. And if that's the case, if you're into the shredding stuff and the thin stuff, you probably already know some of these dimensions, but I need to know what it is you prefer at the first fret thickness and even up here at the 11th or 12th fret thickness. Okay, let me make sure I don't make any assumptions. Once this guitar is finished, I need to know. And if you don't know these things, it's completely okay. I'll walk you through it. If you just tell me, yeah, I like a neck that's real flat and has kind of a D shape to it, or I like a real thick, round profile up here, but then I want it to taper out and get kind of flattened out and D up here, because this is very critical on the Explorer or like an SG that does not apply to a Les Paul replica, because a Les Paul or a replica or a Gretsch or something like that. This let me find this dimension. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is the 19th fret location, and that's exactly, if this were a you know what, that's exactly what it would look like. Well, if this was on a Les Paul, then that's the 16th fret location, and I'm talking about access to upper registry. But if this is a Les Paul or a Gretsch type guitar that connects the body to the 16th, uh, feels completely different. You're stopped from, your thumb is stopped much sooner. We all know that. So it gets really critical, because this is such a long platform to work from, that any transition you do better be very tasteful. And the last thing you want to do is feel like all of a sudden it gets fat. So I typically, when I'm building the Explorer replica or a Flying V or an SG type guitar, uh, I'm keeping this profile pretty darn flat, and I typically do not let them get over 1/32 of an inch thick in this area right here. I typically keep them about 7/8 of an inch thick. Excuse me, at the first fret location. This is machined with a 1 inch radius bit rather than a 7/8 inch. If I'm building a fat 58 real chunky profile, I might work with the 7/8, and I mean, it's massive. I built a Les Paul replica for a guy in Savannah, and he just wanted just an enormous neck. I was terrified to build it as big as I did. He received the guitar and he said he loved it, so it was exciting to hear that. But this one is machined with a 1 inch radius profile, and it's machined like this right here, so that once I get to this point, I can turn that curve, and it maintains that consistency. A lot of guys will machine their neck in a jig like this right here, then they stop, then they shape all this by hand. Well, that's dangerous, because you run the risk of losing the compound transition, yet still maintaining that radius right there. Now, I'm gonna jump ahead a bit. This is not finished though, because this will get shaped down a little bit smaller, but not much, because it's going into an Explorer body, and I'll cover that stuff in future videos. But it's just really incredibly important that I keep that taper real low. And I like my favorite neck on it for a moderate guitar that is great for chordal work, great for fast work, great for tapping or any like hammering on or any of that type stuff, like hardcore rock and roll, is 7/8 of an inch thick. This is very important. 7/8 of an inch thick right there. About 1 inch thick right here, and about 1 and maybe a 32nd of an inch thick right there. It's a phenomenal playing neck. Feels incredible. Okay. Right now, what you see, this one is actually 15/16, and this is right here. It's 1 and 1/32 of an inch. It's pretty close to the finished guitar up here. I won't have to do any more machining down here. So what I would recommend, if you want a faster playing neck, then I'll be taking off some of this material down here, thinning it out a bit. But the way I sold this neck as a replacement lower for someone who has a damaged guitar, maybe they've got all of their fretboard and they were just going to they were going to transfer their historical Gibson parts over to this neck lower, that maybe their headstock was just snapped off or something like that. And therefore they could pretty much glue it on here. And if they wanted to glue their fretboard on here and leave it thick, then they would kind of have that heavier, rounder 1959 Les Paul feeling area up here. But if this guy wants a thinner neck, then I can thin it. Can't add any material. You could add epoxy if you wanted to, but I don't do stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend it. So Okay. So probably a little bit too much information, but it's critical information when we talk about those things. And obviously, I'm still not even finished because all I did was cover the taper, which would be about, well, I already covered it, 7/8 of an inch. Oh, this is pretty important. And I'm glad I brought this, I thought of this. Wow, I went right to it. Okay. I owned I think it was an 85 or a 19, it was an 84 or 85 or 86 authentic Kramer. It was unbelievable. And it sickens me that I sold it. But I was smart enough to measure it before I sold it. This was probably 20 years ago when I had this guitar. Maybe 23, 24 years ago. No, it wasn't that long. But where I'm going is, here are the specs on that neck. It had a 1 3/4 inch wide nut, and I can pull that off because this is 1 in 23/32 right now. And just by adding, cutting the fretboard at 1 1 3/4, then it is 1 3/4. So if you wanted it to be almost identical to like an old vintage Kramer, then the specs on that are it's 1 3/4 of an inch wide nut, and it is 0.82. Okay, it's 820 thousandths thick at the first fret. That's 13/16. Okay, that's pretty thin, but you don't want to go any thinner than that. Um, 13/16 is 1/16 of an inch less than 1 inch. Okay, and for those of you guys, and I apologize because I know there's a lot of guys that watch these videos that are only familiar with metric, but that's 7/8 of an inch thick. From that 7 up to that's 7/8 of an inch thick right there. 1/16 inch lower is 13/16. And can you feel it? Like it's night and day, and it's heaven. That guitar, that neck played, it was unbelievable how nice that guitar played. So could I take this from the 13/16? Absolutely. Because when I built this, anytime I build my necks, I make certain that that final route depth right there for the upper part of the truss rod is such that I've still got plenty of material. I probably won't be able to show. I'll go real slow. I'll roll. I've still got plenty. Let me make sure that's flat. I've still got plenty material in the back of the neck to take off. I could take off another 16th of an inch. No, actually, I could take off another. I'm 15/16. I could take off another eighth of an inch, but that would be the threshold. It wouldn't be dangerous, but in other words, I could thin this baby up if you really wanted. And then that guitar at the what was it? The 12th fret. I can't. Yeah, total thickness at the 12th fret. It was 0.904. I should have done the math. I think that was like 15/16. It was super thin. So I just say that to say this. I could turn this neck profile into a 1984 Kramer if you wanted it. So, but communicate with me. That's I need to be careful. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. If I take it down that thin, I'm basically reshaping the whole profile. That's a lot more work, which I had not planned on doing. But I'll work with you on that, Art. Just let me know what it is you may want. Okay, so 0.82. Okay, let me just keep it in the SAE about 13/16 inch thick at the first fret, and probably about 15/16 thick at the 11th fret or 12th fret, and that would feel like an old Kramer. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop because I'm getting a little bit too technical. But I think if you read between the lines, you'll probably see that I'm pretty excited about this project, and I'm at a point now to where the guitars that I build, I don't build a guitar unless I like the client, or either it's a really really cool project. And if you want to know the truth, I would rather build a project that I'm not really interested in for someone I really like or respect or appreciate. But this we kind of hit two birds with one stone here because this guy is super professional, very good communication, and this is a kick-ass cool project. So when you get those two factors going together, that's an exciting project to build for someone. So If you're going to build an old fat 50s neck, then go with a 7/8 inch radius. If you want the more modern feeling, cleaner, smoother, faster, go with a 15/16. And where did this come from? Uh, this neck came from a 1980 Gibson Les Paul that I restored for a guy. I think it was my first video series. Yeah, it was my first video series for building a guitar. It's basically this profile right here. That's exactly what this is. That's 15/16. I'm sorry, 1 inch.